welcome you here. Thanks for being here. I'm Cindy Truinsky, and I'm a former practice owner, and I now consult with psychotherapy practice owners on the business side of their practices, things like structure, strategy, decision-making, and profit. Before I get started, and as people are coming in, and I want to just thank a couple of people who have been very helpful to me in researching and reviewing the HB 1085 law, as well as creating this webinar. My bookkeeper, Lori Dressel, who is awesomely knowledgeable about psychotherapy practices, insurance specialist, Anna Vodarchek, my web guru, Emily Rapport, and my marketing and social media consultant, Megan Nee, who's here, plus a handful of practice owners who have provided important feedback along the way. This morning, Megan's going to be helping me to moderate the chat. And we probably won't have time to make it to all your questions. We'll have some time for questions. So please, in the chat, if you could, when you run your question, if you could add your email address so I can respond either here or after the webinar. Let's see. So the first thing I want to say is I'm not a professor or a polished speaker, although I've done some teaching, but I'm not that finessed with the technology. So Megan and I have been practicing, but please give me a little grace on that. My hope today is that I can explain to you what I've learned and have been thinking about in terms of the impact of HB 1085 on psychotherapy practices. I'm approaching HB 1085 as a strategy and operations consultant to practice owners. I'm not an attorney, an insurance biller, or a contracting specialist. So while we'll discuss the law and its implications, what I'm mostly focused on today is the business decisions that owners need to make. There will undoubtedly be implementation details and carrier-specific, meaning specific to the insurer, procedures that will continue to emerge as this law comes into play. If you have questions for those things, they're probably best answered by a billing specialist or an attorney or the insurers themselves. But, you know, I'm open to hearing your questions. I just don't know if I'll be able to answer them all. Second, please remember that every practice is different, and how the new reimbursement floor impacts your particular practice at the particular juncture it's at with your expenses and business model will be different from other practices. It's like there's no one size fits all on this. Lastly, I want to say that I know some practice owners have invited members of their team to join us today. Most of my work is with owners, so today's discussion is primarily addressed to owners and the business decisions practices are facing. Obviously, some of those decisions affect therapists directly, but my goal today isn't to advocate for one side or the other. It's to help practice owners keep their practices healthy, create sustainable places where good clinical work can continue, and you know, keep on doing the great work of mental health support and treatment that all of you are already doing. All right, so whether you have a solo practice or a group practice, today this session is for owners who are responsible for the financial health of the practice. I am going to be, this will be data-driven, this conversation, and I'll be showing a spreadsheet, so I'm kind of giving you a little bit of a warning in advance. I know it's not always comfortable for everyone to look at spreadsheets, but I hope you'll all hang in there, and let's see where we can get to. I've tried to keep things very simple so that we can at least have a shared framework. So HB 1085 brings a variety of changes. If you haven't already read my blog about the law, you can find it at the link here, and Megan will be adding it to the chat. What I want to do today is not walk through the law in detail, but I want to help you to start understanding what the reimbursement changes may mean for your business and what kind of decisions, in my opinion, it's going to require. For most practices, this isn't just good news. Rates are going up. It's actually a moment where your current business model will either hold or start to experience additional stress. So at a high level, we're expecting increased reimbursement on all of the most common mental health CPT codes, including diagnostic codes. The timing and extent of those increases is going to vary depending on the payer, meaning the insurer. But my understanding is that the reimbursement floor will be consistent across payers, commercial insurance payers, right? Because only some insurance plans will be affected. State regulated or commercial plans are going to be governed by this new law, whereas self-funded or ERISA plans will not be. Those plans tend to be governed by federal law. So those are not included or regulated by state law. I did create a download guide to help you identify if specific plans are regulated by HB 1085. It's at this link in the slide. And in addition, Megan will add it to the chart. Why it matters now. The changes are coming. The impact will vary by your payer mix. And in my opinion, the best time for you to be penciling out how you'll respond is now. Here's the important part to me. How HB 1085 will impact any given practice will depend on the number of dates of service billed out from commercial plans. Not just the number of clients with commercial plans, but the actual number of dates of service that are billed to commercial plans. So as I've been talking to owners, I'm hearing a few very understandable but risky assumptions. The first is that if reimbursement goes up, we'll just make more money, hooray. But in reality, many practices are operating on percentage-based compensation. So when revenue increases, clinician pay and benefits will increase also with that higher reimbursement, with greater reimbursement. And in many cases, that will absorb some of the gain that the practice might hope to capture. If you're not profitable now, you won't probably be in that much better shape with HB 1085, all things being equal. The second assumption is that as an owner, I can wait until I know exactly what's happening. The problem is by the time you have perfect clarity, you probably will have lost the opportunity to make proactive decisions. Owners who wait could be caught in a reactive mode, like if you wait until 2027, or end up making decisions even after the fact, after the reimbursements start coming into the practice. So the opportunity for real reflection, research, and choice will have passed. And the third thing I'm hearing is something like, I'll just pass the increases along to the clinicians. I think this can feel fair, but it can also lock in a structure that leaves the practice itself under-resourced, with profit continuing to be compressed and sustainability remaining threatened. So instead of thinking about this as rates are going up, I would suggest you think about your business in this simple way. Revenue comes in. Revenue is all the money that comes into the practice, and expenses go out. You pay for the things that the practice needs. What's left is what you have available for clinical compensation and benefits and profit. Most practices I work with already have thin margins and little, if any, profit. This is due to a number of problems in the industry that I won't go into here. So when reimbursement changes, the real question becomes, what can my model do with that change? What can your business model do to strengthen itself? Or will I just allow that increase to flow through and continue at best to leave things where they're at or slightly tip the scales in a bad direction? Every practice will need to decide how to increase revenue, how this increased revenue should be allocated between compensation, overhead, reserves or safety, cash, benefits, growth, and profitability. There isn't one right answer. So I want to share a spreadsheet based on a hypothetical practice I created to illustrate the issues at play. The impact of HB 1085 depends on how much of your revenue comes from the impacted commercial plans, plus a small twist. If spreadsheets aren't your thing, you can ignore the screen and just listen along, but I really encourage you to stay with at least some of this, okay? So let me get that up for you. All right. Okay, can everyone see this? Yeah, okay, great. I'm going to open up some other columns as we go, but let's start here. So here's the practice assumptions I'm making for this illustration. It's a practice of 8 MA level therapists. Each therapist does approximately, on average, that is, 850 dates of service a year for a total dates of service of 7,300. In addition, the owner does 500 dates of service a year, okay? All MAs levels. Therapists are compensated at 60%. Their current average reimbursement is $130 a session for 90837. We'll skip this layer right here now. And of course, they don't know how many of their plans are commercial or how many are self-funded. And for the purpose of this illustration, so it doesn't get complicated, I'm leaving out-of-pocket payments and reduced fee clients, okay? So their total revenue based on this would be just under $950,000, right? And the practice's average fee would be $130 an hour. When you look at how that breaks down in their budget, this is what you might see, making some assumptions. Therapist payroll would be about $530,000. The employer paid taxes and benefits attached to payroll would be approximately $50,000. That's about 9% of revenue. The operational expenses around 142, payroll and admin, like if you have a bookkeeper, you have a billing person, about $50,000. At this level, and for the sake of simplicity, I'm not including any leadership in this, although this is the point at which a lot of practices start to think about having leadership involved in their management of their team and their practice. Marketing, allowing a very small 2% of revenue. Owner comp, $110,000, very modest. Taxes, again, this is going to vary considerably based on the way your practice is set up. If you're subchapter S, if you're a sole proprietor, all these different things, LLC. So I put something in for this, and just play along with me. So you'd have total expenses of $915,000, net profit of $34,000. Okay, and you could use this profit to have some operating capital, like you take $10,000 of it and set it into your operating account, your checking account, so you have better cash flow. You could add some of it to an emergency reserve savings account. I recommend about 4 months of operating expenses be on reserve for practices. Or you could use it for marketing, bonuses, profit sharing, additional administrative support, or take it as an owner distribution, or some mix of those things, right? So now I'm going to go back up to the top, and I'm going to show you what happens when you, let's see. So, oops, sorry. I actually want to do that. All right. So from this view, what you're seeing is a column where 15% of dates of service in the practice are coming from commercial funded plans that would be getting the benefit of the new floor, which for master's level commissions would be $177.48 for 90837. Everything else remains the same in all of these examples. Okay? What changes is how many dates of service, what percentage of the dates of service are commercial. So in this example for 15%, I'll just walk through this so everyone understands it. Now the commercial plans are driving $194,000 of revenue, and the self-funded are driving $806,000 for a total of $1 million, a little over $1 million, which represents a $50,000 increase or a 5% increase in revenue. And you also notice that the practice's average fee goes up, right? So if we go down below here, we're looking at exactly the same numbers and exactly the same buckets or expenses, and we're seeing how the new higher compensation changes these things, right? So when you look down to the bottom line here, what you see is that there is a slight increase in profit for the practice. It goes up about, what is that, $13,000, which is good, but that's not revolutionary. It's not going to change the practice in any substantive way. And the same is true if the practice has 25% of its dates of service under commercial plans and 40. These are what these two other columns represent. And I won't walk through all the detail, but I think you can see here that the revenue is increasing. The percentage overall increase is substantial. 15% additional revenue, I think, is a good step up for many practices in a year. And the average fee is going up. And then at the bottom, you can see how the profit changes. Basically, it increases, but this is not a revolutionary increase here. So if only 15% of dates of service are under plans affected by HB, this 8-therapist practice sees about a 5% increase in revenue, which is meaningful but not transformational. And truly, some owners may discover they simply don't have enough of these dates of service or enough exposure to these plans to really change the economics of their practice. Under the second scenario, where the practice, 25% of the practice dates of service are billed to commercial plans, I think we're talking about a more noticeable change, but probably still not enough to assume everything gets better. Margin or profit still matters. It drives investment and growth. So not having profit down here after everything is paid really limits practices. And a lot of owners will think that hiring more clinicians will create growth, but that just adds more expense to payroll and benefits and often creates more complexity. So I would just suggest caution if that's what you're thinking. Compensation structures matter, meaning how you're paying your therapists matter. And I know there's other ways to pay therapists besides the percentage base, and we're going to come to that in a minute. But this is the largest, regardless of how you pay your therapists in any professional practice, payroll and benefits are the largest expense. It's just the way it goes. That's where all the value in the practice is derived from. So even with more revenue, overhead still exists and costs will continue to rise over time. And then finally, in the last scenario, at first glance, this looks pretty good and practice owners might start getting excited. But remember, if compensation is percentage-based, much of that increase flows straight through to payroll. And so even in this example, the $138,000 we see, where is it? This $138,000 increase in revenue only converts to basically a $13,000 increase over this. Okay? It's not phenomenal. You won't be rolling in cash. So, and even at 50 dates of service under HB 1085, revenue will only increase by about 20%. So these three scenarios give a real feel for how the proportion of dates of service reimbursed at the new floor impact of practice, I think. And my conclusion would be that this law can improve a practice's finances, but not dramatically. There was one other thing I wanted to point out here. Now I'm blanking on it. Maybe I'll come back to it later. All right. So let me, oh, I know what I wanted to say. So I also want to say I'm using 60%, and I know there's a lot of practices who are have a compensation structure where they're leaning into 65 or even 70% for some or all of their therapists. And I think when you change this number even by 5%, so I'm going to change this to 65, which is going to change it across all of these examples. What you see down below is in today's world without HB, these practices are running at a loss. Even with 15% of dates of services under HB 1085, they will run at a loss at 25 and at 40. It's not that easy to get profit out of this scenario. Okay, so I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think caution is warranted. All right, I'm going to slide over and show you one other thing that I started thinking about, which is a little bit of a twist here. Okay. So this is an example inside the team. The dates of service that are billed to commercial plans will also be variable. Some clinicians will have many more dates of service under commercial plans than others. Why? Because no one's been paying attention to commercial versus self-funded plans very much. And as a result, how clients have been distributed may vary. And in fact, we don't even know, but I don't know, there may be some, oh, I won't say it, never mind. But how they've been distributed for sure hasn't been taken into account. So here's Maria. She has 40% of her dates of service that she completes in a year that are under these commercial plans. Whereas Henry only has 15%. For the commercial plans, they're both getting the same reimbursement rate, 177.48, and for all the self-funded, they're getting 130. They're both getting the exact same. They're both doing, for this example, 850 dates of service a year. Their compensation rate is 60%. Maria will generate from her 40% dates of service under the commercial plans $36,000, while her self-funded compensation will come to just under $40,000. For Henry, though, with only 15% of commercial dates of service, he'll only generate $13,500 at this 177.48 rate. The remainder of his compensation will be determined, as it always has been, by the average fee of 130 for self-funded. So a disparity starts to show up. Maria will make close to $76,000 in a year, and Henry will make just under 70. That's about a difference of 9%. And initially, this may or may not be apparent to therapists, but I think eventually it will become obvious that there's differences in how people's earnings are based on who's on their caseload. So these two therapists working in the same practice are going to experience very different effects simply because their payer mixes are different. So for me, as a former practice owner, this raises all kinds of questions. The first thing I ask myself is, should compensation remain percentage-based? Should it remain at the same percentage with 60% or not? Or, for example, should therapists be paid a set fee for each CPT code regardless of who the payer is? So in other words, we have to be looking at how this is going to affect everyone in the practice, because if it's not examined up front, it will, and then you'll be working on the back end to resolve this as therapists become more aware of it. And then the other question is, what portion, this goes to the first part of this spreadsheet, what portion of the increase should be retained by the practice? So these are business decisions that you will or will not make between now and January, but they will influence your practice. Okay, I'm going to close this up. We can open it again if we want to. I'm going to go back to the slideshow. Thanks for bearing with that. So I spent a lot of time modeling these scenarios and also talking to some very forward-thinking practice owners who have started modeling their own scenarios. And one thing is clear to me, that the law doesn't really answer questions. It creates a lot of questions and a lot of challenges. And some of the learning is yet to emerge, but I'm hopeful for people like all of you who are in on this early and thinking about it now, that you'll be giving it some consideration in advance, because in my opinion, the practices that benefit most won't necessarily be those receiving the highest reimbursement. They'll be the ones that make the best decisions with the reimbursement and revenue that they receive. So it really comes down to 4 decisions that most owners will need to make. 1, do I adjust my published fees? And if so, when? 2, does my current compensation model still work under these conditions? 3, how do I allow clinicians to benefit from the increases while stabilizing the business? And lastly, what needs to change now versus what can wait? what are the priorities for creating a smooth transition? So these aren't small decisions, obviously, and they're not ones you'll want to make reactively. So I want to take a little time now to go to a little Q&A. I think we might have some questions.
We only had one question so far, and that is, will you be sharing the slides after the presentation? And I would add to that, will you be sharing the spreadsheet?
Hang on a second. There's a little noise in my background. So someone's asking, will I be sharing the slides?
Yes, the presentation, and also will you be sharing the modeling spreadsheet?
Actually, I haven't considered whether I would share that information. I am going to be offering two different ways to work on this problem to owners. And oh, it's such a good question. I should have thought about it. I'll think about it now. I'll see. I'm happy to share the slides. I'm a little worried about sharing the modeling spreadsheet, but maybe I can share it. I just want to think about it.
Sure, I would think that the way it could become problematic if people change the formulas and then they just aren't seeing it the way that you intended.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, we have another question from Lena. She says, do we know when insurance companies will be announcing the actual rates?
Yeah, it seems like, Lena, in my understanding, that insurers have an annual review period every year, like Blue Cross Blue Shield has just completed theirs. And the law allows them to make the change at or after their annual review in 2027. That's when they have to pull the trigger.
Okay, we have another question. Are you saying that the flat fee compensation versus percentage might be more beneficial based on this model? And are you also saying that anything above 60% compensation creates tighter margins for profit?
Well, the answer to the second question is yes, it just does. Because on top of that 60% you're paying people, you're paying 7.65 or something percent in employer paid taxes, plus whatever the cost of benefits are that escalate with increased compensation, like workman's compensation, like matching for retirement funds, things like this. So yes, so the higher you go above 60%, for sure, the tighter it makes your margins. What was the first part of that question?
Are you saying the flat fee compensation versus percentage might be more beneficial based on this model?
Yeah, I think that's a decision each practice is going to have to answer, given their model, their business model, and also the mix of dates of service they're seeing from different payers. I just think it's worth thinking about now. You don't want to try and make that change later on. It would be much better to be out in front of this upcoming reimbursement shift.
Okay.
Does that answer the question? Was that Evelina? That was you. Yeah. And Lena, did I answer your question? Sorry. I drifted away. Right. She's off camera. Maybe she's doing something else. Oh, yes. Great. Oh, thank you.
So we have two people with similar questions. Rose says, so rates are not effective January 1st. They are effective June 1st for BCBS. Doesn't the law state the rate increase goes into effect upon renewal of people's plans January 1st, not review of fee schedule, for example, June for Blue Cross Blue Shield? And Rebecca says, so not necessarily January 1st, but whenever they do the annual review after January 1st. So it may not change until next summer.
Yeah, that's my understanding also. I mean, it's if they do change January 1st, all the more reason to be thinking about this and reviewing and modeling your own practices, scenarios now. Because there's not that much time, really, at this point. There's a half a year left.
Okay. There was another question from Jeffrey Gersten. He says, why are you assuming the percentage affected will be only up to 40%? What if a practice has 90 to 95% commercial? What if practices have a balance of salaried and commission positions? If one were to change from a commission to flat rate model, how would one roll this out?
These are really great questions. All right, let me take the first part. The first part is, why am I assuming only up to 45%? The research I did, first of all, it's very hard to figure out in the state of Illinois exactly how many insured are under commercial versus self-funded plans. That's not an easy number to get at. I made some guesstimations, but I don't feel completely confident in them. So I assumed conservatively because I tend to take a more conservative approach. If you are a practice who has almost all commercially funded plans, that will be amazing, and it will certainly be more of a windfall for you. But I don't think that's going to be the case for most practices. I do have a guide for figuring out which of your plans are commercial versus self-funded, and it's in my first blog on the HB law on my website. So that would be my recommendation. The first step would be to figure out how many plans you have that are commercially funded. But more important than that is going to be how many dates of service were actually billed to that plan in the last 6 months or 12 months, something like that. So the second part of your question, Jeffrey, was what, Megan?
He also had a follow-up question, but he was saying, in continuation of that, what if practices have a balance of salaried and commission positions? If one were to change from commission to flat rate model, how would one roll this out?
Yeah, that's a big question. That's a big strategic and implementation question, right? And I can't give you a simple answer right now. I mean, that's the general kind of work I do with practice owners, is figuring out the details that are right for them, for their practice, for the model that they've built. And I can't offer a general answer to that.
Okay, and then just finishing up with Jeffrey, he also added, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, ERISA, Medicare, Medicaid are excluded, but many practices work with the big four: BCBS, Aetna, Cigna, UHC, Optum. Why are you assuming ERISA and self-funded will be the majority? We have looked at this and found these plans to be the large minority.
I mean, I hope you're right. Again, I would just say I lean towards conservative estimates and forecasts. I've always been that way with my own practice, and I still try to look with owners at a conservative picture so that we don't count our chickens before they're hatched. If you have specific information about your practice, then that is amazing and great, and I'm sure people would want to know how you managed to fall into that kind of mix of payers.
Yeah, somebody commented on his question in a similar way. Okay, and then Thomas asked, do you know if it's too late to renegotiate a Blue Cross Blue Shield Illinois contract for start in January 27?
I don't. That's an answer. That's a question that I would, if there's anyone on this call who is a insurance biller or insurance expert, I would defer to them.
Okay. Rebecca commented, most plans through reunions and big employers are not going to be eligible. Plans purchased through the marketplace will likely be eligible. Medicare, Medicaid is not eligible. When I looked at my mix, it was pretty disappointing because many of our clients are covered through union-backed plans.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've seen talking to practice owners is that, and this is expectable and probably normal, is that we try to benchmark on what we hear other people are doing or how things are going for them or decisions they've made, policies they've embraced. But I think that this is an instance where every owner is going to benefit by knowing exactly what's going on in their practice, because the differences may be quite marked, and you wouldn't want to be making decisions based on something you heard somebody else was doing who has a very different payer mix than you do.
Okay, I think that we've covered all the questions so far. If anybody else has one, feel free to pop it in the chat. Okay, Rose says, sorry to go back to it, but regarding rate increase tied to renewal of fee schedule, can you share where you're getting that? My read of the statute is very explicit that the rate floor attaches at policy renewal, not at the insurer's fee schedule review cycle. Am I missing something?
Let me look at this. Regarding rate increase tied to renewal of the fee schedule. I don't know where I'm getting that from. I'm sure it's in part out of the actual text of the law. I also read quite a bit. NASW has written a little bit about this law that I've been using them as a benchmark. Again, I'll just say my understanding, because I could be wrong. I'm not, as I said, I'm not a legislator. I'm not used to reading laws in depth. My understanding is that sometime in the year 2027, after the plan renewal, annual review and rate increases are normally published, is when we would see this from each individual insurer. I would love if you have, you say it's in the statute, Rose?
She did say that, yeah.
Yeah. I would have to go back and look. And yeah, I'm sorry. I can't say more, and I don't want to
Yeah, I think that's an important piece, but I think what's most important is that just looking, like you said, at your individual payer mix and just how your practice operates, regardless of when it goes into effect. I mean, obviously that's important. Jeffrey says it will go into effect at plan renewal. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, is there any more questions? Someone anonymous says, do we know that this applies to psychiatric practices as well?
It applies to the mental health CPT codes, mental health and substance abuse disorder CPT codes. To the extent those are in play in psychiatric practices, I imagine it will apply there as well.
Okay, we have another question. Michelle Paris says, I have a flat rate model based on the average of what we take in. Is it advisable to wait to see what the actual increases are before adjusting that flat rate?
It might be, but what I would advise is that you look forward and do a little bit of forecasting. I would get a hold of number of dates of service that are coming into your practice in the last 6 to 12 months, and try and make a guesstimate of how many of those would be under this law, how that would affect your revenue, and really to look at what you would be able to share, with your therapists. What would make sense and what would help the practice both give therapists greater income, which they so deserve, and also stabilize the practice. By stabilize the practice, I just want to say what I mean explicitly is create a more financially robust platform where you as the owner have a regular compensation, because we know many owners don't take regular compensation, that you are able to build in infrastructure adding administrative hours if you need that and it's desirable, investing in certain things in the practice that might be more overhead expenses, maybe a new answering service or offices, or, I mean, every practice is going to be different. So, how you think about that is very important. For some, that will maybe primarily go to therapists because their practice is more financially stable. But if you're precarious right now, I would really encourage you to figure out a way to stabilize your practice while also offering therapists an increase.
Thank you. Sheena asks, can you share some of your thoughts about making decisions around possible fee adjustments?
Yeah, so your published fees, like if you have your fees on your website or what you tell people you charge when they call in, if you have insurance contracts, your published fees have to be consistent across all payers. So if you don't have a published fee that is greater than the maximum new reimbursement floor level, you won't capture all of that. For instance, if you have a master's level practice, like my example, but your published fee is $165, you will leave $12 and some cents on the table because the insurer probably won't pay you that extra $12 unless your fee is like $180. Or if you have a practice full of psychologists, you may need to have your practice be up to $250. So that's the only way, and that fee, because of your contract with the insurer, has to be consistent across payers. You can't set different fees for different payers, whether they're different insurers or different, like individual out-of-pocket pay clients. You have to start at the same baseline. Now you can negotiate with out-of-pocket pay clients, but you have to have one published fee. So when I say looking at your fees, that's what I'm talking about, is how do you prepare for that? How do you let your clients know about your changes? How do you help your therapists understand how to work with the new fees that you're establishing in your practice? And why you're doing that, of course, is very important. Does that make sense, Shana? Yeah.
That leads pretty smoothly into this other question of any ideas how to explain to clients why their out-of-pocket expense is going up if they have a deductible to meet and not a flat copay scenario. Any concern on losing clients due to this increase in their out-of-pocket expense?
Your out-of-pocket expense, yeah. Well, yes. You can say that for years, there have been no substantial increases in reimbursement to psychotherapists for these codes. It's been at least 30 years. And now this law is really creating an incentive or a requirement that insurers pay at a higher rate and compensate psychotherapists at a level that's more commensurate with medical fees and how those are established. You may have to, and this is always tricky, so please do this with caution. You may, just trying to think. I think there's a way to their out-of-pocket fee. No, there's no way. Sorry. Yeah, it will definitely be an increase in cost for clients. Yeah, if they're paying an out-of-pocket fee, right? Because now instead of paying 165, they'll be paying 180, or instead of paying 185, they'll be paying 250. of paying the difference between those.
Mm. Dr. Amanda Rios says, I agree, Cindy. I've been telling my staff that it seems unfair, but we have been grossly underpaid for a long time, and we need to make sure clients know that this may require an adjustment, but they've been getting a discount for decades.
Yeah, they've gotten a huge benefit. I mean, it's hard to say in this, also in this climate, the economic climate that we're in, but people have been benefiting from these falsely or industry suppressed fee levels for a long time. I mean, that's one of the main problems practices have had historically, is that their costs, their expenses keep on going up. And in any other business, when your expenses go up, eventually you have to raise your prices. But we actually, to the extent that you are a practice that accepts insurance, have a ceiling that you've been under for many years where you couldn't go really higher.
And Rose reminds that she's helpful to remind clients that the rate is higher, but it goes toward deductible, which will be met sooner.
That is
Not
true.
a huge comfort, but they aren't paying more overall. They are still only responsible for the totality of their deductible.
That's true. That's true. Yes. Thank you, Rose.
Evelina says, did you mention that you have a resource to help us identify our current self-funded commercial plan data?
Yes. It's in the HB 1085 blog. So if you scroll down towards the bottom, there's a place where it says, let's see, I think I might even have it here somewhere. It says something like, is my insurance 1085 impacted by 1085? And it's a bit of a long document because there's a lot of twists and turns the way insurance is set up, but I think it could be helpful for you. There's the link. Megan just put it in the chat.
Michelle asks, when do we declare our new published fee for insurance companies?
I would do it sooner rather than later. This might be one of the first things I do, is start moving your practice, because there's a whole cascade of communication that has to happen when you increase fees. And if you haven't been doing this regularly, then you won't have the protocols and the communication templates set up for it. The first thing you want to do is let your team know that you're going to be increasing the published fee, the timeline that you're doing that on, why you're doing it, to get ready for this change that we're going to see, how it's going to be communicated to clients, what therapists need to do to communicate and reinforce that message to clients, because of course the practice can send emails and letters, actual snail mail to clients, but that doesn't mean that they'll read it. And so therapists will need to probably be talking to clients and letting them know what's coming, so that they can deal with it now, and doesn't come as a surprise when it suddenly hits them with an invoice or a statement for a much higher out-of-pocket pay amount. Did that answer that question?
I think so, but also how, so for publishing the fee, is that on a website, or like how does the insurance company validate your published fee?
I don't know how they validate it. What I would do though is make sure that you have a fee schedule somewhere in your practice documents that your insurance biller is using across all insurances, that is reflected in any of your practice documents that go to clients. You know, like if you have a psychotherapy policies, it states like what the cost of individual psychotherapy is versus relationship therapy or anything like that. If you have, if you are giving out the good faith estimates that are calculated based on the fee, it needs to be reflected there. So it's not so much that you need to put it on your website, it's that you as the practice owner need to know that it is being implemented consistently in all areas of your practice. And the way I would do that is by having a centralized document where that information lives. and making sure that each person that is needing to talk about fees has the same information from you.
Does that answer your question, Michelle? Jeffrey added, the new fee will go on all forward-facing areas and on claims.
That's how you're going to handle it? Yes, correct. I'm not sure what forward-facing areas, but claims, yes.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions. Dr. Lisa Koenig says, Cindy, do you know if these rate increases will apply to testing assessment codes for psych or neuropsych testing?
It's my understanding that they will, yes.
Good. Back to that previous conversation, Rebecca comments, don't forget to update your fees page on your website and Psychology Today or any other therapist profiles.
Yeah.
I think that's what Jeffrey meant by forward-facing areas. So anywhere where your rates are published.
Got it.
Great, thank you.
Great, great questions.
Yeah. One more minute if anybody has any more questions they want to add to the chat, and then we're going to move on to the final part of the presentation. Hey, thanks everybody for your input. Oh, wait, one more question. Shayna says, is 90847 included?
Yes.
That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Am I the host now? Do I need to make you the host again, Cindy?
Okay, great, fantastic.
Oh, you're still the host, so you can go ahead and share
You're
again.
still the host. All right, great. All right, well, let me just wrap up a little bit with some thoughts on how to move forward. So when I first started digging into HB 1085, I assumed that this would be mostly a reimbursement kind of conversation. But the deeper I've gone into the numbers, the more I've come to see it as a decision story, which I think this presentation has emphasized. The law itself doesn't determine who benefits most. Some practices that receive similar reimbursement increases for similar dates of, percentages of dates of service will end up in very different places financially because they'll make different decisions about how to use that increased revenue. So the payer mix matters, the compensation models matter, timing matters, and waiting, I would add, is a decision also. You don't need perfect clarity right now, but I do think it's a good time to begin thinking intentionally about what these changes might mean for your own practice. Some of you may already know what your next step is. Some of you may simply need time to think about what you've heard today. If you'd like support, I've created 2 options that I'm going to offer to people. So let me just go to that slide. I'm offering something I'm calling the Decision Lab, which is a small group planning lab, 4 sessions in July, where we'll work through the implications of these changes for your practice, modeling revenue, looking at compensation, looking at pricing in a structured way over a few sessions. This is great for owners who are thinking, I want a structured way to work through this, and it would actually help me to hear how other owners are approaching it. The second option is a focused 4-session sprint where just you and I, the owner and I, look directly at your practice, your numbers, your structure, and I help you make clear decisions about compensation and pricing. This is for owners who are thinking, I need to make decisions about this relatively soon, and I want to be laser focused on my specific numbers. So it's a slightly different, similar outcomes, but slightly different way of getting at it. All right. The Decision Lab, I would say, helps you think it through and build understanding, and the sprint helps you decide quickly today, like in short term. So Whether you choose to work with me or not, I hope today's webinar helped you move away from reacting and more towards researching, planning, modeling, and deciding. The earlier you start to think about it in a structured way, the more options you'll have. I want to thank you all for being with me this morning. I want to thank Megan again for her support. Yeah, I hope you'll reach out to me to discuss your practice if you want to, and look at one of these options to support you in following through with the decisions you have to make for your practice. All right, I'll stop sharing in a minute. Yes, Shayna, my spreadsheet did include owner dates of service. Oh, no, it didn't. So in my spreadsheet, let me say this, it included owner dates of service as part of the revenue picture. It assumed that the owner was being paid like a salary instead of being reimbursed partially out of their dates of service. So the owner's dates of service go into the whole revenue bucket, but they were paid then, I think in the first example, they were paid like $110,000. And then as that reimbursement, higher reimbursement kicked in, I incremented them like $5,000 or $10,000 so that it showed some growth in owner compensation. Anybody else questions? Any other thoughts? I'm happy you're welcome to unmute yourselves if you like. If there's anything that's top of mind.
Jeffrey had another question in the chat. Why have so many practice owners set the split in such a way that erodes profit?
Why, Jeffrey? Because they felt pressured to keep up, I think, with cost of living expenses, and they saw no other way to do it except to give their people a higher percentage, even if it was untenable for their practice. So yeah, I think it's basically that they were unable to say, no, the practice can't afford it. And that puts them then in a very precarious position. I'm trying to unmute you, but I somehow can't. Jeffrey, if you're there, I'm asking you to unmute. I don't know.
It just asks, it gives them the option, but then they have to click a button to confirm.
Yeah, so maybe he's gone already. All right. Other people, are you still here or?
Seems like they're still here, but maybe they stepped away from their desk.
Okay. Shayna, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming. One more
Oh, she
question.
has a question.
You can
Can you
speak
try
if
to
you want.
You have to click unmute on her.
Hang on a second. For some reason, I've got Colleen Hansen blocking something.
Oh, if you make me the host, I can do it too.
You unmute now, Shayna? All right.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you so much. This was also very helpful. I think I'm stating the obvious here, but the split or the breakdown between commercial versus self-funded is going to be a fluid thing always, over the course of a year and over the course of many years. And so do you have thoughts about how to approach this initial decision, given that there is some, I'm guessing there's going to be some fluctuation probably in both directions in an ongoing way?
Yeah, I've already heard that some insurance companies are going to encourage people to set up self-funded plans, right? As a way of avoiding having to pay the higher reimbursement fee or rate. I think the way that I would approach it, Shayna, is I would, of course, make a conservative plan for the near future. And then in the context of knowing that things may shift and I need to be able to live if things go stronger to self-funded or things go stronger towards the commercial. So right now, things go more strongly towards commercial, which seems unlikely. things should be all right for most practice owners. It should be, a gradual increase in their revenue, which should help them financially quite a bit. But if things go more towards self-funded, which I want to say in my experience of self-funded, like sometimes those self-funded plans are actually already reimbursing more than Blue Cross Blue Shield is for their commercial plans, let's say. I know I found that with Northwestern's student plan, that the reimbursement rate was higher than what Blue Cross Blue Shield was paying by about $35. So I'm not sure why that happens in a self-funded plan, but that's another variable that has to be taken into account. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question. I think it's wise to be thinking about that we don't know where this is all going completely. And that's really also why I'm so committed to reinforcing the idea that we need to think about it sooner rather than later, because the pressure will continue from therapists to earn more. And I understand that because they're not being compensated in many cases at a living wage. But the practice has to survive for therapists to have jobs.
Yeah.
Every therapist, even though we see a lot of individual therapists taking off and going into private practice, many of those therapists, it's way premature for them in terms of their clinical work and in terms of their understanding of the business that they're taking on. So I think that would be really hard on our field if people made those kinds of choices. So that's why I think it's important that the practices stay viable. So we have a foothold in the industry, especially with everything that's happening with venture capital and big tech and all of that kind of stuff. The mom and pop store that owners represent is important, I think. And I think it's also even more important than like a pharmacy business or a shoe store, because I think it's so much more personal. We want to know that there's real people behind who we're going to get psychotherapy services from.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. This is a bit of another direction, but it's a clarifying question. Somebody asked earlier, and I feel uninformed that I don't know the answer to this. Is it wise to consider renegotiating their contract? And what's the background of that question? Why would that be a consideration?
People have been trying for a long time to renegotiate their contracts because the reimbursement levels have been too low. I spent the last 2 years in my practice researching exclusively how to get in touch with somebody at Blue Cross Blue Shield who would talk to me about renegotiating. I thought I had a strong case for it, but I couldn't get a hold of anyone. So I think that the renegotiating your contract concern now might be getting confused with that effort. And now what I'm hearing some people say, and I don't know if this is true or not, I doubt it kind of, is that in order to take advantage of this higher reimbursement rate, practices may have to renegotiate their contract, which I'm not sure what that means, because of course you can't get a hold of anyone. And the law is really focused on requiring the insurers to come forward. It's not focused on creating more barriers for practices and therapists to get reimbursed. So I don't know. I have something, let me just see, I might have something that I looked up on this. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have more that I can say about it.
Okay.
I think that the implementation details will be forthcoming if there are implementation details, meaning if you have to do something special to submit claims that then apply the 1085 standard. I think we'll be hearing more about that. Hey, Mindy, nice to see you. Do you want to chime in? You're welcome to unmute yourself if you want to.
I was just, I just tried to research that a little bit more after our back and forth about it. And I wrote the person who had published information saying that we did need to renegotiate to understand where she got that other than that one article that I had passed along.
Yeah,
And she suggested that the thing that made most sense is to talk with the rep who was involved in the bill to begin with,
yeah.
and to
That's
talk with the
Adam,
insurance
Adam
person in her office.
Somadiah. Yeah,
Yeah, and I haven't gotten further in that.
that's probably a great idea. Um, I read that link that you sent me, and I haven't had a chance to reach out to that company, but I'm wondering if that isn't in part slanted towards creating urgency to enlist an organization like that to handle your claims. I
I
mean,
agree. I was just surprised the woman who published that is, does all the advocacy. She's on the board that does all kinds of advocacy stuff for therapists. And
uh-huh,
so I was surprised that she published that without doing her due diligence, which is why I asked her. And she kind of said, I don't know. I just know what I read.
yeah.
Go to the source is what she said.
It's so tricky, I have to say, as long as we're a small group. When I wrote the blog post, I had some misinformation in it. And I went online to verify what I had written, and who I got referred back to was my post. And I was like, no,
Oh.
this is not good. So there's not a lot written about it yet. And I really am eager to hear from other perspectives. Like I would love to hear some insurance billers chime in. In fact, I reached out to someone this morning who I think is has got a pretty good head on her shoulders, to ask her if she would want to be in a online panel discussing HB 1085 in the fall. Because I think there's a lot unknown about this still,
Mm.
you know? Um,
Mindy,
Well,
can
and so
I ask
oh,
you a question? Was it Neolitics, the one that you're referring to? Okay, I
yeah,
see that stuff.
mm.
So
you saw that also, Thomas?
well, yes, I took a step further with them as well,
Oh, tell us.
and did and then they I am pretty concerned about it because they ask specific questions about the business and its, finances, and so that's part of the negotiations. And they took that information, which then ended up in an AI factory, destination unknown. I mean, it's just something called Firefly or some kind of AI functionality that records and then processes, and it's a very nice summary. But then there's like a release that I did not sign. That
Mhm.
then so I'm gonna have to go make sure I fight back there and make sure the information that I provided them, including quite interestingly the recording of my voice, uh, to get that off of their computer. So there'll be a little bit of a fight. I'll have to do later. So they've pressed hard. They've promised a proposal to me. Um, right now, I'm quite hesitant, given my experience with them so far.
Yeah, I hear you. That sounds scary. I mean, it's the kind of thing, thank you for sharing it. It's the kind of thing that people could get caught up in lots of scams, right? Especially with the voice recording, right?
Yeah, it's weird.
Uh,
Yeah. They were the ones who were urging. Their first email came out that I saw was in late May and said we need to renegotiate the contracts in May or June to get ahead of it. Otherwise, you're going to be in the old contract. That's the sell that they're uh,
Meaning this
marketing.
is right now, 2026.
You got it. You got to negotiate in 2026 to
Yeah,
have that contract, to have the law embedded in the contract. Now, the law itself might be sufficient. Their argument is it must be embedded in the contract to get the
yeah.
prices in
And it
January.
seems to me that's the point of the law, right? Is to
Yeah, good point. Good point.
state that the playing field is being leveled in some way, and
Yeah.
that it won't be on the provider to negotiate all these things on a one-off basis. I mean, if you
Right.
still have to call, I mean, okay, maybe you have to call the insurance company and give them a little bit information or something, but I'm thinking like renegotiating your contract seems like a lot to ask.
It is tricky to try to figure out what goes on there.
No worries, no worries. Um, Yeah, I appreciate the information. It's very interesting.
This issue does make me wonder, so far in my years, I've only been paneled with Blue Cross. And I've thought about paneling with another insurance company. And would you say, Cindy, that now is the time to do that? Like in this conversation of like whether or not you have to renegotiate contracts, like if you are thinking about widening who you're paneled with, would this be a sensible entry point?
Yes, I would say yes. Logically, it makes sense. And something in me, Shayna, is like, if I still had my practice today, I also only Blue Cross Blue Shield, we're Medicare and Blue Cross Blue Shield. I might be saying, I'm going to wait.
Hmm.
I have just in my life, I fell into a group of people, mostly men who were traders. And there's a saying in the trading world, how does it go? Pigs go to slaughter and something else. I mean,
Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered.
there you go. Like being driven by greed can set you into a position where then you take even a harder blow, right? So I am not like one to double down right away. I like to keep on learning. Setting up, like if I had my practice now, I'd be looking ahead to see how can I adjust some of my compensation model? How will that help the practice under these different scenarios? How many of my dates of service in the last year were from commercial plans? Was there a trend? If I would look back at all 12 months and I would be asking myself month by month, what is happening with the number of dates of service of commercial plans? Are they going up over time? Are they going down over time? Are they static? Is there a seasonal effect? I would want to understand that, right? Because that pattern will likely continue at least for the next 12 months. And if you don't know what that pattern is, then when dates of service revenue drops, you'll be like freaking out and drawing all kinds of conjecture. Oh, this means that they're making it harder for us to take advantage of this law. It may or may not. It might be a seasonal change. It might be that was the pattern you had already for some reason, not even seasonal. We don't know, right? So I would be looking at that kind of thing, and in the back of my mind thinking, well, when strategically would it be right for me to expand into other panels? I don't think I would jump on it right away. And it's just me personally. I mean, you might have a good argument for doing it if we were talking more specifically about your scenario. But when I think about my own level of risk tolerance and maybe legitimate concern over being a small fish in a big pond, right? We are not the big players in this pond. I would be careful. That's how I.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, no worries. All right, folks. I guess if anybody has another question or comment, I'm happy to hear you out. I love this.